So in recent years, there's been declining reading and math scores, especially at the elementary school level, and lawmakers and parents are worried about what's happening in adolescent education, what could be driving this. So I want to come here and ask you guys what you think is the cause of this recent trend.
I don't know. Yeah, I actually don't know. That's why we're always
I
we're
don't
doing
even
a
know.
silent shake.
Hold on, I don't even understand what you said. Like, can you speak English?
Today, we're investigating why kids are getting dumber. Now, you might be wondering, Shreyas, is that actually you at an elementary school? Were you actually talking to those kids? Do their parents know what's happening? And the answer to all those questions is obviously, talk to my lawyer. US math and reading scores have fallen to their lowest in decades, and it's not just COVID and social media that's causing this. It's a much deeper problem that no other video on the internet has talked about. Even Ivy League students can't read books anymore, making my parents realize that their stupid son who didn't get into any Ivies is much stupider than they thought. I'm Shreyas, and this is a show about the news. We talk to every level of the education system, from kids to teachers to principals to even Obama's former education secretary. But first, let's quickly go over the problem. American 13-year-olds are seeing their math and reading scores decline tremendously, especially over the last few years. Even students who typically do well in school have seen their math scores go down by 6 to 8 points. The nerds are getting dumber too. The percentage of 8th graders that cannot read at a basic reading level is at its highest in the test's entire 3-decade history. 8th graders, you should be feared because they'd make fun of your insecurities, and now they can't spell insecurities. And seems the problem is getting worse when we look at younger kids. 40% of 4th graders are not able to test at the basic reading level expected for their age group. That's the worst in 2 decades. For context, basic reading skills at this age is just a test assessing if you can read a text and tell what the main idea is. And until seeing this research, dude, I thought this was a basic human skills we were all born with. AI is going to easily replace our 4th graders, and if that happens, then who's going to call you the N-word in a Call of Duty lobby? Yeah, I know you were doing that. I never did it because I wasn't allowed to play violent video games. Instead, I was doing Kumon. You know, the math tutoring company with the most accurate logo ever, a sad, potentially Asian child. Anyways, it's not just kids. The Atlantic's journalist Rose Horowitz talked to 33 top US university professors and found out that teachers are no longer assigning reading at the levels they used to because they find that college students are no longer able to handle it. And while Columbia University's student newspaper pushed back against the claim that elite college students were no longer able to read full books using their own anecdotes from professors, Gallup polling found that college graduates are reading on average 6 fewer books in 2021 compared to years prior. And if even Ivy League students are struggling with reading books, then who's gonna do our country's most important jobs, like moving logos around on a PowerPoint deck for McKinsey or Goldman Sachs? Hey, McKinsey or Goldman Sachs, that was just a joke. You guys rejected me for numerous internships, so that was just my way of getting back at you. But in all seriousness, my resume is linked in the bio, so feel free to check it out. Anyways, this decline is not just about test scores. Kindergarten teachers are reporting that these new kindergartners who spent many of their formative years locked up during COVID are coming to school with no ability to play with other students. Instead, they're just resorting to hitting and biting each other like primates. They don't even have the muscle strength to play with some of the toys or pick up a pencil. It's never been easier to beat the shit out of a class of kindergartners, a dilemma I often find myself facing. Teachers are reporting that some kindergartners have no math or reading skills. They can't even recognize a triangle, which is easy. Watch this. Triangle, 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 triangle. Aftermath of Hiroshima after we dropped the nuclear bomb on it. Triangle, triangle, triangle. In fact, we talked to some of those kids and their teachers to see what they think about this national crisis. We've seen national test scores go down. Even before COVID, they started going down, especially in math and reading scores. What do you think is causing that?
A lot of times we're not taking into heavy consideration every aspect of the child. In order for learning to truly happen, the child has to be socially and emotionally well.
We've done a worse job taking care of the children.
Exactly.
And why has that gone down? Like, why have we done a worse job at taking care of children in the last few years?
How many people actually takes the time to ask a question to a child?
So our 5th graders are the COVID kids who missed kindergarten and 1st grade.
Yeah.
And so while she mentioned them being more tech savvy, we've also noticed that our kids are more socially, they're lacking some social skills that they would have picked up had they been in attendance for kindergarten and 1st grade in school in person.
What does that actually look like? Like, are they not able to just go out and make friends as easily?
Yes, they can.
Basically, yeah.
Working in groups, collaboration takes a much longer time. Listening skills and communication skills, those are things that we have to like almost teach and model on a consistent basis for them.
Kids now that phones and iPads just getting away. They just stop studying. They just start using their iPads and they just watch things that don't help you, and then their score is just getting better and better because they're not practicing studying.
I have several kids who fall asleep in class, and I've spoken to the parents. They'll tell me, "Oh, it's because they're watching, they're on their phone or they're on their iPads late at night and they're not sleeping."
Raise your hand if you think that screens, iPads, phones are distracting kids too much in school. You don't think so? Do you actually think so?
No. He wants to be on the phone right now.
You want to be on the phone right now?
No.
No?
Yes, you do.
We just had like a writing piece on poetry, and they were using a lot of TikTok memes as their lines in poetry. So like, I'm Sigma this, and I'm...
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
I have brain rot. And I'm like, you need to explain to me what all of this is.
Yeah. Do you guys think that smartphones or social media is hurting kids in school?
Whoa!
No?
So, I mean,
Wait. What do you think?
So I think no, but it depends on if you watch like things that aren't helping you learn. But if you watch things that are educational and stuff, then it's good.
So you're watching math videos on TikTok and YouTube?
I don't know.
Have you seen, in your own experience with the kids you're working with, a rise in anxiety or like ADHD or ADD?
Like the anxiety, we have like one student that he wants it to be right. He'll sit there all day and work on a 8 to 10 question assessment.
Mm.
Yeah, totally.
And
I have a friend, she's like half of her class either see the therapist in their school, the psychologist, or have a support blanket or a toy, and she teaches 4th grade.
Wow. Yeah, you know, when we went home, we wouldn't see our friends until the next day. No one would call us or text us or anything. Isn't that better? Wait, you know what we would do? We would have to go outside and find them. What about you? Do you think that we should ban phones?
No, but it's just annoying because say you're doing something and important and you need a second and they still call
Notifications
you.
are calling.
That's just so annoying.
Yeah.
I just hate like what people just send like notifications, like something at night, and then you hear like a ding noise about something really weird.
These downward trends started before COVID, but the pandemic definitely exacerbated it. School districts that were shut down for 90% of the 2020 to 2021 school year saw math scores decline by double compared to districts that only had shut down for 10% of that school year. But if the pandemic only made these existing downward trends worse, what caused those trends in the first place? Maybe social media? Social psychologist Jonathan Haidt has written extensively about the impact of smartphones on our children, finding that they're causing an uptick in anxiety and depression for kids while also replacing essential activities like hanging out with friends or getting sleep, obviously very important to kids' academics. In 2014, Time magazine published a piece arguing that social media sites like Facebook and Twitter were making you dumber, except we looked into it, and the study that Time magazine was citing wasn't even about Facebook or Twitter, and it didn't even find that people were getting dumber. Time magazine was just trying to write a clickbaity title so it could go viral on social media. So by telling people that social media was making you dumber, it was using social media to make you dumber. Now, smartphones and COVID have been blamed a lot for declining student test scores, but there is another silent killer that many people don't even talk about.
Long summer breaks can be a time of learning loss, known as the summer slide.
Summer reading loss and math loss, it's where there is a gap of 6 to 9 weeks of summer break. So sometimes students regress.
Yeah, that's right. Who would have thought the Indian guy thinks that we need to spend more time in school? Summer vacation. I know what to play with. But it's true, we consistently see testing scores decline after summer vacations because students have spent so long away from the classroom. In fact, Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers describes that the achievement gap between high income and lower income students can actually be explained by the vacation gap, as higher income students tend to have access to resources that allow them to get ahead during summer vacations. Now, you might think with all this data, parents must be very concerned about what's going on, but here's the weird thing. 90% of parents believe that their kids are doing well enough at school, when in reality, less than 1/3 of all 8th graders are proficient in reading or math. And that remaining 10% of parents unhappy with their kids' education includes my parents who are watching right now. Hey, mom and dad, Remember when you said that if I didn't go to Harvard, I would just end up as one of those crazy people walking around in the middle of the street ranting to no one? I showed you. Even crazier, when parents were surveyed about how concerned they are about their kids falling behind in school during COVID, the largest group of respondees was parents saying their child didn't experience any learning loss during COVID. A lot of parents are completely unaware of how their kids are falling behind in school. Just listen to these teachers describe their frustration. What have you seen for a lot of kids who might be struggling, what their parents are doing? Do you think they're doing enough? Do you think they're aware?
Many parents now don't push their child. They're not teaching their children how to deal with challenges that might arise or that they might face.
Numerous studies show that parents' involvement in their education is critical. In fact, it's seen as the one thing that can transcend any other factor that could hold back a child in school, including socioeconomic factors. And it can start with parents just being available to their kids, supporting them emotionally, spending time with them, sharing their values. But 62% of kids report feeling that their parents were too distracted by smartphones when they tried to hang out with them. And 68% of parents in a 2020 Pew survey admitted that this was true. Obviously, there are a lot of factors here that can disproportionately hurt lower income families, like access to daycare, being overworked, access to summer programs and tutors. But by and large, parents are unaware of how much their kids are falling behind and seem uninterested in doing something about it. This leaves us with just the crazy parents who care way too much and show up to Board of Education meetings to do things like this.
A dad taking it off in the middle of his local school board meeting.
Look, we've only scratched the surface of the way the education system is failing younger students. But if you want to learn more about this and all sorts of other things that are challenging the American social fabric, you have to read our producer Gaurav Srivatchan's book, Eye of the Cynic. It's really good and all the money goes to charity. Just another thing that Gaurav does that doesn't get him paid. Now, as our children's test scores hit a multi-decade low, politicians are talking a big game about addressing it.
America's education system needs a disruption.
Investing in the education of our children is one of the smartest investments we can make.
There are failing schools in a lot of these communities.
The learning loss that those children are facing is irreparable.
It's simple. In this new American century, education is not an option.
A majority of American children of every race is not getting a quality education in the United States of America. That's a national scandal.
The good news is that our country is investing the critical resources we need into our schools to make sure that they're getting smarter.
I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education.
Oh, God. Well, it's unclear if this will actually happen because courts could push back at this, but Republican lawmakers have been giving us the same reason as to why this is necessary for years.
Black men, I love black men.
Oh, wrong clip, my bad.
School prayer is banned, but drag shows are allowed. And if federal bureaucrats are going to push this radicalism, we should abolish the Department of Education. We're going to be returning education very simply back to the states where it belongs.
Send it back to the states.
Except that's not true. That implies the Department of Education somehow took education away from the states. In fact, we reached out to Obama's Education Secretary, Arne Duncan, to get his word on it. A huge argument for Trump and his aides is that the Department of Education is pushing woke ideology. Is the Department of Education, does it even have the levers to push any political ideology?
There's zero of that, zero evidence of that. And in fact, by law, we were prohibited from touching curriculum. Education has always been a local issue in the United States. And so 90% of the funding comes at the state and local level, only 10% of the funding comes at the federal level. Mm-hmm. And again, that funding is just basically to give more resources for our most vulnerable students across the country. And in 50 states and 50,000 districts, to say this is what you have to teach doesn't make sense. You know, what works well in Montana might not work well in New York, might be very different in Louisiana.
Look, Trump is saying he wants to get rid of wokeness from our education system, but the states receiving the most money from the Department of Education are Alaska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and Kentucky. Are those the notorious woke states that we're fighting against? Now, I'm not saying the Republican ideas to fix the education system are wrong. That's not true at all. There is a good argument to be made as to why we need to revisit school funding. Throwing more money at a school to solve the problem will not fix it if you're not focusing on kids spending more time in the classroom with better educators, with better curriculums, and with higher standards. But I want to close on one final point. As a country, We're not even having a national conversation about how to make sure our kids are the most competitive in the world, upskilling en masse to tackle this ever-changing economy. Instead, we're way too focused on how many and what kind of kids Harvard University accepts every single year, or using federal fundings to beat Columbia into ideological submission. Ivy Leaguers represent just 0.3% of all students enrolled in college at any given time. Critical race theory has also been an obsessive point in our national conversation about education policy, even though Republican lawmakers themselves admit that only 4% of teachers were even teaching anything close to it anyways. And while politicians and activist parents are hyper-focused on very thin parts of American life, the rest of our kids are getting worse at math and reading, and it seems that we're all okay with it. If politicians wanted to be honest with you about how they actually view education policy, they'd say something like this.
Education is not an option.
Food for thought.
I have a Majesty's
Actually, we texted me.
Cousin's a girl?
No, he's a boy.
No. Yo.